What is up, you guys? Welcome back to the podcast. My name is Isabel Prestia. I'm your host, and I'm so glad you chose to click play. Before we do get started, though, I would appreciate it so much if you could leave us a rating and review on whichever podcast platform you choose to tune into. That way, it spikes the algorithm and it helps us reach so many more empowered women just like yourself to start somewhere. And on that note, I am beyond excited to introduce the guest for today's show. I had the pleasure of chatting with Samantha Daly, known as your no BS bestie for mindset, spirituality, business, and creating your dream life. Honestly, such an aligned person to have on the podcast. Sam was so much fun to chat to. We honestly covered so much groundwork in this episode, chatting all about lifestyle, mindset, business, spirituality, money, energetics, navigating life, all the things that I just know so many of you guys are absolutely going to resonate with to a T. So be sure to check out Sam. I will leave all her links below in the show notes. But without further ado, let's go ahead and jump straight into today's show. Hi, Sam. Welcome to Start Some of the podcast. How is everything going in your world?
It's going well. I have a really good feeling about 2023. So I don't know about you, but I feel like there's good energy. I feel like we're crawling out of like this dark night of the soul that we've had collectively um, as a world, as a society. So I feel really excited. I feel really good. This month has a lot of energy behind it. And yeah, I just feel good about the year ahead.
I love that. Everyone I speak to says such similar things as well. And I'm not sure if you do this, but I love to create like a word for the year. And my word for 2023 is lush. And to me, it just means like, simplified. I love how you said as well, like it really resonate coming out of this dark, heavy energy. Like 2022 for me was just so heavy as well. And it's like we've come out with all these really beautiful learnings and lessons. And yeah, I'm so like energized for this year.
Yes, my word for the year this year is momentum. So,
I love
feeling like we've done the work and put in the hustle and built the foundation. So now we can kind of ride on momentum and have like a more easeful year, still with lots of progress, but just feeling that like flow.
Yeah, I love that so much. I think that's such a perfect segue. I want to chat firstly all about business. I really find I love your whole journey. I really resonate with it as well in terms of you bypass the whole 9 to 5, essentially traveling to Europe, working in Spain. And I know you're a Sagittarius just like I am. And I really just like resonate and love the whole, curiosity for life and for travel. And I'm really curious to know that's such a big thing what you did, just bypassing the 9 to 5, going across the world to Europe. What did trusting yourself to take that risk look like for you?
I wish that I had a better answer for people because I know there's so many women that are struggling to trust themselves and they want to do big things like quit their jobs or move to a different city or a different country. But to be very truthful about that time in my life, I didn't have any of like the knowledge or awareness that I have now. And so at the time, I really was just like following my gut.
Mm.
And now that I know more about my kind of internal makeup and my human design and those types of things, I know that it's really my sacral authority that allows me to have that trust, and it's just that inner gut feeling of knowing that something is right for you and being able to listen to it or choose to follow it, even though there is also at the same time, simultaneously, lots of conversations going on in your head about, and what if this happens? And what if it doesn't work? And what if I hate it? And what if this fails? Or I have to move back in with my parents or whatever else. So simultaneously, while all of those things are going on in your head, it's just the ability to know what that gut feeling is and choose to trust it despite the fear.
I resonate with that a lot. And I want to touch on, I feel it's also canceling out that noise around you. So those conversations, that self-comparison. Me personally, that was a huge thing for me to overcome. How were you able so well to navigate that?
Well, I think at the time, like if we're speaking about specifically moving, like declining corporate job offers, moving to Spain, right? This was when I finished university. So I had just graduated. And what was coming up for me at the time in terms of like comparison to everybody else's journeys was it's a time in your life where we're all kind of like this school of fish moving in one direction. You go to school and then you get accepted to a college, hopefully, or a university, and then you go to your higher education and then you get a job after that. So you're still very much like in that societal funnel of like, what's the next step? And so the natural next step for everybody around me was to get a job, right? We've graduated university now, we have degrees, it's time to get a job. And so I think the comparison came in terms of, all of my friends and everyone around me at school was like, "Oh, I'm moving to this city and I'm moving to this city and I just got accepted by this big company and I'm working in this big like corporate industry and they're going to pay me X amount of dollars." And it was all about, what job offers they were getting and how much money they were going to earn and like the excitement of moving to these new big metropolitan cities in corporate America. And I wasn't doing any of that. Like I knew I just like was going to abandon all of that and move back to Spain after I had studied abroad. So the comparison was around really trusting that my journey was going to be enough and that it was still going to lead me to a place of success, even though I was kind of like bypassing that natural next step that society tells you is required. And I think that required a lot of like self belief in myself of even if this makes no sense on my resume or CV or whatever, that I went off and did a year or two or three in Europe, I'm going to make the most of it. And I know what I'm capable of. And I know what knowledge I have. And I know that by traveling the world and studying a language and living abroad and having these experiences and expanding my mind, I'm going to become more valuable. I'm going to become an asset, whether it's to myself or it's to somebody else's business. And so, really, just trusting that even though the narrative was like, you don't want to take these random gap years or not get a job now because you're in the perfect position to be hired by companies, you're fresh out of school. I had to create my own story of what I'm doing might not make sense to anybody else. And it certainly doesn't follow the natural progression of my degree in marketing and PR to go teach English in Spain. Like teaching was not part of my degree at all. But I had to create my own story of this is still going to be valuable for me. This is still going to make me an asset in the future.
And how did that serve you?
I mean, it served me immensely because it was the thing that allowed me to actually leap, right? If I had believed the story of like, oh, this isn't what you're supposed to do after graduation, or this isn't going to make sense to anybody, or I'm not going to get hired later on if I do this thing that makes no sense, then I would have stayed where I was. I would have taken the job offer that I got in Chicago. I would have moved to that city. I would have started a life. I would have worked in corporate. I probably would have woken up a few years later and realized that I hated all of it. And I would have felt really stuck. So it would have changed my whole life. Right. And I also met my partner and my soulmate and started my business when I was in Spain. And that journey was the thing that completely opened me up to personal development and all the mindset work and everything that helped facilitate me starting my business. So none of that would have happened if I didn't choose to create my own story and take the leap despite the narratives or the comparison of what everybody else was doing around me.
I find that so inspiring to hear is just trusting yourself. I think that's such a powerful message for the listeners and for everybody. And I think this is a great segue as well. So, the importance of owning your expertise. So, when it came to starting your business, what is value, I want to say, for the listeners, and I guess also for that past version of yourself to own wherever it is you are at in your life? So, a message to people who are really struggling to start, they're thinking they need to wait till XYZ till they achieve this certain outcome. Starting right now, like, what is that message for people?
Well, I love that you said owning where you are in your life because this is actually a theme that's come up for me a lot quite recently is this idea of acceptance. I went to a yoga class recently and the teacher at the start kind of had these little like angel cards and everyone picked one and you got a word and it was a word to like sit with during the practice. And the word that I picked was acceptance. And at first I was like, I don't know if I really love this word. I don't know if this word like resonates with me. I feel like I'm like really in acceptance of like all of my things right now. I feel like I'm in a phase of my life where I am accepting. And then the more that I sat with it, the more that that theme came up, even after the class, days and weeks later, it just kind of like kept coming back. And and it was exactly that. It was accepting the phase that you're in right now and not trying to rush into the next thing or getting caught up in when I have this, then I'll be happy, right? Because no matter how much we grow, how successful we become, how confident we all are susceptible to that like rat race idea of once I have this, then I'll be happy. And so, really being able to accept where you are in your journey is pivotal for you to actually get where you're desiring to go. Because by believing that you should be somewhere else, you stay stuck exactly where you are. All of the time that you spend thinking about how you shouldn't be here and you should be somewhere else, or you should be further ahead, or you're too far behind. By resisting what is, you create more suffering in your mind and in your life, and you prevent yourself from creating these really incredible results that could happen if you just were able to look around and say, you know what? This is the phase that I'm in right now. This is the phase of life or of business or of my career or of my relationship or whatever it is. And how can I be here and learn what's present for me and just put one foot in front of the other and get 1% better or do just a little bit today, do a little bit tomorrow. That's what creates like real progress. And that momentum that we were talking about is that like slow and steady wins the race type energy. And that's one of the things that I share with my business students about adopting feminine energy into your business as being like a feminine leader is this idea of like slow and sustainable growth. And I think because so many of us are really excited and obsessed with the idea of having everything that we want right now, that's natural. We all want everything that we want right now, right? No one's like, I want to be rich and have all kinds of free time and be able to donate to amazing causes and give to my family and go on amazing trips and serve my community, but not right now. I want to do that in 20 years' time, right? We all, of course, want our things now. But this idea of slow and sustainable growth when it comes to like feminine energy in business is really important because it reminds us and it reminds the universe that we are willing to play the long game. And we're not just here to take a shortcut or to get a quick fix or to get validated in some way or to find some way to soothe our ego. We're here for the long game, right? And this is something that I learned from one of my mentors when I was really in that like hustling phase and always thinking that I had to be somewhere faster, better, stronger, right now. She was like, this is your life's work. And if this is your life's work, then what is the rush? Right? If you want to be doing this and cultivating this and continuing to grow in this arena for the rest of your life and really creating an impact in a global way, then what's the rush? You don't need to hit 10K. You don't need to hit 100K. You don't need to hit $1 million in 1 year or 5 years or even 10 years. It's about that slow, sustainable growth. And so I think you can apply that to any area of your life, right? Of accepting where you are and being willing to go, this is what I have. This is where I am. These are the tools and the resources that I have around me to work with right now. Maybe you don't have all kinds of money to invest in yourself, but you have a little bit. And it's making that little bit go a long way because that little bit takes you to the next step, which then gives you a little bit more, which takes you to the next step, which then gives you a little bit more. And so on and so forth. And there you go. Right. And then you're on the journey.
Isn't it beautiful how that card of acceptance has just brought about this whole like realization essentially.
Yeah. And one thing that I'll say about that too is that if you're someone who's like, I'm assuming that you are, if you're listening to this podcast, right? You're into personal development, personal growth. I think like it's so important for us to stay open to the lessons or like continuously being able to learn even from something that small, right? Going to a yoga class and being handed an angel card with the word acceptance on it. Like I could poo-poo that and be like, oh, I'm so above this. I've done so much inner work to accept all of the parts of myself and then get nothing out of it. Right. Which there are a lot of people in this space that feel like they've read it all, they've heard it all, they've done it all, they know it all. And so then they plateau and they stop growing. And so always, no matter what it is, being able to take those simple, basic foundational things that you think that you've already learned and go, how can I apply this to where I am right now? Right? I applied it to where I was 5 years ago, but let's go again. How can I apply this to where I am right now today?
I think that's so powerful. I was on a retreat not too long ago and they were teaching quite basic manifestation practices. And the same thing, I'm like, I know this, but I'm like, I'm going to put my ego aside here and just go back into that student position. And what I got from that experience was something I didn't even know was possible because I just fully allowed myself to receive.
Yes, exactly. That's it. Yes.
Yeah,
Being the student.
exactly. It's really interesting. But I want to ask though, so when do you feel is enough? So, for example, we're on this really beautiful momentum journey, we're taking the step by step. Do you experience this? I know I definitely do, feeling like enough is never enough. Like, when do we feel accomplished? A really big theme for me at the moment as well is being productive over busy. And so, how do you really navigate that the best you can, knowing that this is your life's work?
Yeah, for sure. I can relate to that 100%. I think, like I said, we all want everything that we want now. And so it's natural to feel like, oh my gosh, okay, like everything that I have is amazing and that's great. But like also, I want more. Right. So I think it's natural. I think it's very natural to get into that space of like, when is enough going to be enough? And look, I'll be totally honest. I think that this is something that I'll probably work on and work through for the rest of my life, maybe. I think the way that I can reframe this for myself is that understanding that by having that mentality of like always wanting more or thinking about what's next and what's ahead is part of my like natural drive and ambition. And it's such a beautiful part of my personality and of my internal makeup. And it's truly such a gift that I have such a strong ambition and such a strong drive to create amazing, beautiful, incredible things in the world, including impact alongside of the income or the money that comes with it, but also that ripple effect of human beings that are expanding their consciousness and that are learning and growing and finding new ways of moving through the world and healing their traumas and finding their path and creating beautiful work. Like thinking about that ripple effect and the impact that comes alongside of the income. And just remembering that if I didn't have this intense ambition or drive, then I wouldn't be able to create that in the world. And so when I find myself in those spaces of getting a little bit ahead of myself, right, of not spending enough time in the celebration of what is and just going straight to, okay, what's next? I can remember, okay, this is an awesome function of my ambition, which has got me to where I am today. And it's a beautiful part of myself. And it's nothing that I have to be ashamed for. But how can I put a pause on that function of my personality just for a second to be present in this moment and enjoy a little more? And that's really like what I do. And like I said, I think it's going to be a practice for the rest of my life because I'm naturally such a driven person. I don't know. I think at some point, if I were just happy the way everything was, I would become complacent and then I wouldn't continue to expand on the impact that I could have in the world. And so that's not something that I really want either. So it's like really a challenging, like fine line to find where you're happy and grateful and present with all that you have. But of course, you still have that drive to create more.
And it sounds like really stepping into this feminine leadership has just catapulted and really enabled you to like stand in your truth, I want to say essentially as well when it comes to growing your business. And I love how you mentioned pausing time and really just celebrating. What are some like celebratory practices that you do?
So I'm trying to get better at this and also get more creative because I feel like I just do like basic things that like anyone would do to celebrate. Like go out to like a nice dinner or treat myself to something that I've been wanting or desiring, or a fun way to celebrate, which also helps implement this pause time of slowing down, is to take space away from the work. So it's kind of like, oh, amazing. Like I've gotten to this new place, or I've hit this income goal, or I had a successful launch, or whatever it is. And then going, I'm going to reward myself with X amount of days off, like just for myself. So away from posting on social media, or away from creating the content, or away from pouring into clients, and just actually pouring into myself.
And it's all about filling your cup up so you can serve so many more people as well.
Yeah. So I think that's a unique way to do like the celebration and like the pause at
Yeah.
the same time.
Yeah, I like that. I agree because it's just, buying something, going out for nice food. I'm like, what's something that doesn't involve spending money and eating? Like what else can we do?
I know. That's why I'm like, sometimes it's just basic, but that's one that I'm like, that I think is a little bit more unique that I've been like playing with recently.
Yeah. I think, thank you for sharing that. I love that. So, spirituality clearly is like a huge part of yourself, your business, your brand, and very much of what I'm all about as well. I love chatting about this topic. I'm so curious to know your connection to the divine, the universe, whatever people want to label it as. Can you talk more about how you continue to strengthen this connection?
Yeah. So I think like a lot of people want a 1, 2, 3, here's what to do every morning, wake up, reach your arms into the sky, chant these words, spin around in a circle. Like they want something that they can do that is going to, like, I don't know, drop an angel into their bedroom or something. And I think like it's really a lot less sexy than that. I mean, of course, there's like practices that we do, like meditation and affirmations and visualization and all that stuff that I'm sure your listeners have heard of and are already practicing and things like that. So once you've kind of like established a connection that you have or what you believe in, and you've kind of created these ways to communicate or receive messages, whether it's just through daily life or it's through a practice like meditation or prayer or something like that, I think the way that for me I've been able to strengthen that connection once I've established it is to continue to honor it.
Mm.
And so, an example of that may be like I always say, um, if you're going to ask for a sign, you need to be prepared to receive the sign, meaning you need to be prepared to act on the sign. Right. So there's this practice that in one of the very first episodes of my podcast, it was like all about how to ask for a sign from the universe. And I outlined the whole practice for everybody. And when the podcast went live, so many people were doing this and they were like, oh my God, I received my sign in the craziest way. And the results were just insane. But then it was like people were asking for signs of like, should I quit my job? And then they would get this sign over and over again in like really crazy ways that they couldn't ignore, that they knew for sure this was like God, source, universe communicating with me. But then they weren't actually prepared to act on that sign. They weren't actually prepared mentally, physically, emotionally, financially, spiritually to go and then leave that job. And so the way that I speak about strengthening this connection is really making sure that you honor it. So if you're going to show up and ask for guidance or support from the universe or whatever you believe in, then you need to be prepared to listen to it and actually take action on it. So when I receive a download, when I receive an intuitive knowing of some kind, when I receive a creative idea, even if it's just for a post, right? Like an Instagram post, or if I receive something bigger, like a download for a new program, I'm already emailing my graphic designer. I'm talking to my team. I'm preparing that we will bring this thing into fruition because that helps me strengthen this connection that I have, because I create this relationship where it's like when I ask you for support, or even when I don't, if you're willing to give it to me, I'm going to bring your divine vision into the physical 3D world, right? I'm an open channel and I'm a worker bee, and I am willing to do the things that you have as part of this greater plan that you want to make happen on this planet Earth. Hey, raising my hand, it's me. I'm one of the soldiers who's willing to get the job done, right? I'm going to do it. I'm going to bring it forward. So send me the messages, right? Send me your best ideas. Send me your creative juices. Send me all of the things, because when you do, you can guarantee that I'm going to bring it into the world. So I think that's a really amazing way for people to strengthen the relationship is like when you ask for guidance, support, or even when you don't, when you receive that, move on it, take action on it. Have faith that's big enough to go, oh my God, this is kind of crazy. I don't know how this is going to happen or work, but I received the message. I trust this source. I want to have this reciprocal relationship with the universe. So here I go. Right. That's exactly how it was for me running my first retreat. I was putting off running a retreat for so long because I kept having all these excuses and fears and doubts of "Oh, it's so many logistics. It's going to be so challenging. Like bringing everybody to another country. Oh my God, the liabilities, the contracts, like all the things that I have to worry about. And so I was like, I'm not ready yet. I'm not ready yet. I'm not ready yet. Right. And then in a breathwork ceremony, I received that message really loud and clear of you must be doing in-person events now. So I went home immediately from that retreat where we did the breathwork and I started looking for places and I put the money down and I booked the villa and I was like, okay, here we go. I don't know. I guess spirit is telling me to do this thing. So I'm just going to trust that people want it. They're ready for it. They're going to buy it. Right. And of course it worked out beautifully, but it's terrifying in the moment to take the action and listen. But I really think that that's what strengthens it.
That's such a beautiful response. And do you feel every single time that you do honor that and you listen and you follow through, that is only building upon your connection?
Yeah, of course. Of course. Because I feel more connected in the sense that once I bring something to life and I realize, wow, that was such a divine download that I received from God, source, universe, spirit. And look at it now, like thriving in the world, this program that I created, or even just this like post that I put out that like I love or that people are resonating with or that is helping people. Right. So I'm like, wow, that's amazing that that came from source. And it makes me feel more connected to that. And then I think it's on the reciprocal side that God, source, universe feels more connected to me because, like I said, I'm someone who's willing to take the message and put it out into the world, whatever it is.
And do you think that has an opposite effect when you choose to ignore what's coming through out of fear? Like imagine you got the download in your breath work to do the retreat. If you chose to ignore it and push it away, do you think that is then, lowering that connection that you have?
100%. And I want to be careful with the way that I say this because I don't think that like God or the universe is ever really out to like punish us. So it's not like, oh, you didn't listen to the download. So now I'm not going to speak to you. Well, it's not like we're not going to get cold shouldered necessarily from God or the universe. At least I don't believe that that's the way that like divine spirit would behave with us. However, I do think that the more that you ignore it or you feed into the egoic stories of like, I can't do this, or it's not for me yet, or maybe later, or I'm not sure when, or how is that going to work? I think that what happens with that is that you lower your own self confidence of actually being able to do the things that you say that you're going to do. And so then, no matter how many messages you get, you're diminishing your own inner sense of capability,
Mm.
right? It's kind of like we build confidence by sticking to our word and by doing the things that we say that we're going to do. And that makes you feel really great. And that makes you feel really productive. Everybody knows that feeling of when you say, all right, tomorrow I'm going to wake up early. I'm going to do this. I'm going to get some movement in. I'm going to have this for breakfast. I'm going to sit down with my journal, whatever it is, right? Not that you have to have this like elaborate morning routine, but you get the point. The feeling when you actually do that is like, you're on fire, right? Like you can do anything that day. You're unstoppable because the first thing that you did was that you kept your word. And so I think the same sort of energy applies to keeping your word with the whatever, God source universe has given you. And so when you don't do that, when you go back on your word or when you ignore those messages, I think that confidence lowers and that really inhibits you from being able to do the work and take the action steps needed moving forward to get where you're ultimately trying to go.
It's that piece of momentum, essentially.
Yeah. Yes, exactly. That's right. Right. The more that you listen, the more that you follow, the more that you say, okay, use me. What would you have me do? What would you have me say? Where would you have me go? And then you go and you actually do the thing that creates that momentum. And so then that just becomes so much easier moving forward.
And still touching on to the topic of spirituality and the connection to, divine universe source, how do you use this in relation to the energetics of money and attracting in more abundance?
Mm. Yeah, this is like a huge conversation. I'm trying to think like what angle do we want to take? I talk about money in all of my programs. It's one of my favorite topics. So we cover it in some capacity in every program. And then there's certain programs like Cosmic Cash and Wealth Calibration that are completely dedicated to this idea of money. So there's so much that I could say on this. But if we're talking about the sort of like spiritual side of money or this like energetic kind of connection with money, I think one thing that's really important to understand is that money is an energy, right? I think most of us like have learned this by now. It's like everyone's obsessed with this idea of like getting into energetic alignment with money, right? So we understand that money is an energy, but it's not like an energy that just moves in one direction. And so there's different ways that we can think about it, but when we're when we're not listening to these messages, when we're not following through with our word or um, delivering on the guidance that we're receiving, we're almost like kinking the hose. If you think of like the flow of money as like the flow of water through a hose, it's almost like we're kinking the hose. And because we're scared and we're doubtful or we're fearful, we squeeze the hose and we kink it and we're like, no, I can't spend anymore. I'm scared. Or like, I can't invest in this thing. And so we squeeze the hose and we think that we're just stopping water slash money from going out and from leaving us. But what we don't realize is that this hose is a circle. And so we're also stopping the flow of money from coming back to us, right? And flowing into our lives and flowing into our bank accounts. And so another way that I've seen this illustrated is with the breath, right? Like oxygen is similar to money in the way that we have to breathe it in and we also have to breathe it out. And so when you're breathing out money, AKA spending money, putting money out there in the world, circulating money, I like to say, when you're spending or circulating money, you're not thinking, or at least we shouldn't be thinking, like, oh my gosh, I'm never going to get this oxygen back, right? When you breathe out, you're not worried about never being able to breathe in again, right? And you're not worried about all the people around you that are stealing the oxygen from you or feeling like there's like this limited amount of quantity. So if someone over here is taking really big breaths, that doesn't mean that you can't also take a big breath. Right. I hope everyone's following. If someone has a lot of money, we shouldn't be thinking that it means that we can't also have a lot of money. Right. And so if you start to think of like this inward and outward flow of money as the same like inward and outward flow of oxygen, it becomes more neutral. And I think that's the key when it comes to like the energetics of money is like finding a way to make the idea and the conversations that we have about money way less emotionally charged and just neutral, right? We're not getting all upset and guilty and fearful and stressed about breath. We just do it in and out all day long, every day. We trust that it's there. It's always going to be there. Sometimes I'm exhaling more, sometimes I'm inhaling deeper. It is what it is. It's part of the journey, but the flow is continuous. And so we can choose to create a belief system in which we adopt more of that relationship with money.
So did you essentially, when you really got into this whole work, and I love how you teach it in so many of your programs, it really is that, I mean, firstly, that embodiment piece, like really embodying that exact analogy you just shared and being okay with it as well. I feel people who are just starting to learn about the whole concept of money as energy, their mentality is probably like, well, of course I'm going to save my money so I do have more. So I feel like it is kind of that scary risk you have to take. Like, what were your, I guess, like steps in embodying it to begin with?
Yeah, I think everything in terms of, I mean, everything in business. I always say this like self trust is my main business strategy. And so it's at the foundation of everything. And it comes into play a lot when it comes to money, especially with what you're speaking about in terms of being able to let some of it go, right? Being able to invest it or put it into your business in some capacity so that you can grow the business and expect that it will come back to you and that there will be an ROI on that investment, right? And so that requires self trust. It requires building the belief system that every dollar I spend comes back to me multiplied. I mean, I said that to myself so many times until I don't even really have to say it anymore because it's legitimately part of the neuroplasticity in my brain that every dollar I spend comes back to me multiplied. But we get the opportunity to like practice that at bigger levels as we grow, right? So in a phase of my business, spending $55, well, actually, I didn't even have a business yet. This was just my life. Spending $55 on a 30-day challenge, I literally thought about that for 3 days. And I was like, I don't know, is it going to be worth it? Is it actually going to work? Is it going to help me? Right? $55. And look, there's compassion and understanding from me for people that are in that space because if you haven't done that before, if you haven't built that muscle of self-trust of what I put in is going to come back to me tenfold, then yeah, that can be a scary investment. But then you invest $5,000 and you're like shaking in your boots, like, holy shit, this isn't even my money. I had to borrow this from someone, but I needed to get started in my business. So I had to borrow money from a family member to invest in a coach so that I could learn the foundations and figure out what the heck was going on so that I could build a successful business. And that was scary, right? Because it wasn't even my ass on the line. It was like somebody else that trusted me with this money. But you do that and then you grow and you realize, oh my God, I'm okay. I didn't die. Everything is fine. I actually made $15,000 as the ROI of that 5K. So this is great. This is amazing. And then you invest 10K and then you invest 20K. And then your threshold just continues to increase. But we're always being met with how much can I trust? And it's not to say that growing your business requires you to invest ridiculous amounts of money the more that you grow, right? Um, I think that's kind of like a misconception in the coaching space, at least, that where it's like, if you have a big business, then you need to be investing like $500,000 into a coach. And that's not always the case. However, as we grow, the stakes are naturally going to get higher. The investments are going to get bigger, whether it's for a coach or whether it's for softwares or things for your team or hiring employees or renting out an office or a facility of some kind, whatever it is, it's going to get bigger. And so we're always then asked to meet ourselves once again at that same place where we were when we were scared to invest the $55, which is, do I trust myself to make this decision and choose to believe that all of the decisions that I make are correct? And I think that's a big thing that can help people in this aspect of not only self trust, but especially when it comes to money and sending it out into the world and letting it go, letting it flow, is trusting that the decisions you make are correct no matter what. I think I heard Amanda Francis talk about this one time. Um, and she was like, every decision that I make is correct, obviously, like every financial decision. And it's not about whether you get the ROI that you expected or it turned out exactly the way that it was supposed to. Every decision that you make is correct because no matter what happens, you were supposed to make that decision. You were supposed to learn something from that. You were supposed to grow in some way from that. So we can t- walk ourselves back off the ledge of like, oh my God, what's going to happen if I invest this money? I can't let it go. I need to save, 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 save. I'm only going to be safe if I save, by trusting that no matter what we decide, as long as it feels intuitively aligned, that it's the right choice. Because whatever happens is what was divinely guided to happen so that we could either progress in some way or learn a really important lesson that then ultimately helps us progress in the right direction.
Everything in due time, and all your past mistakes and lessons, I'm sure you can resonate with this as well. It can be turned into content. It can be turned to teach and to share with other people so they can then bypass that time.
Exactly.
And the last thing I want to touch on in regards to money is energetic minimums. How and what does that exactly look like to you?
Mm. Yeah. So energetic minimums is kind of like what you're willing to tolerate. And I think you can apply these to across the board, like to anything in life. But a lot of people speak about energetic minimums, especially in business when it comes to money and to finances. And I think it's an important thing to take a look at what your energetic minimums might be. And so to find out what your energetic minimum is for anything in life is to look around and notice what you have and what your life looks like. Because the way that your life is right now, the way that your business is right now, the way that your monthly income is right now is all a reflection of what you're willing to tolerate. And so if there are things that you don't like or that are not at the level that you want them to be or desire them to be, then that's an invitation to raise that energetic minimum. Because whatever you're seeing in your life right now is a reflection of what you are willing to tolerate. And so some people are just willing to tolerate this struggle. In fact, some people are really addicted to struggle. If it's a dynamic or an energetic that they've grown up with or that they've had in their life for a really long time, we can become addicted to this feeling of like always just scraping by or just nearly making it, right? And so that can become the story of your life or your business if you hold that minimum. And so it does take work to raise the energetic minimum, but it starts with a simple decision of deciding I'm no longer willing to tolerate this, right? It's I'm no longer available for this behavior. I'm no longer available for these types of friends. I'm no longer available for this energy or this type of exchange in my life. I'm no longer available for my own excuses. I'm no longer available for this level of action. I want more. I'm no longer available for 5K months because I want 10K months, right? It's really deciding and proclaiming and putting that energy out into the universe that I'm no longer available. And so, sometimes people notice like that they just have this like especially when it comes to money, no matter how hard they try, there's always like a number that they'll never go below, right? So it's like some months they might do uh 3K, 5K, maybe there's a random like 9K or 12K, but it's like they never go below $1,000 or something. And so if you never dip below $1,000, then that's your energetic minimum. Right. And so you're playing in these realms like above that, but that's the place that you never go below because energetically you've decided that that would be like, we'll air quote, like death in the sense of like, that's what's unavailable
Yeah.
to you energetically. That would be like abandoning who you are and what you've decided your life is. But unfortunately, a lot of us have energetic minimums that are quite low and that kind of sit in the space of struggling.
And so, how can we quantum leap and get to a whole new energetic minimum as well?
So, first is deciding, right? Well, I think actually, let's backtrack a little bit. The first step is taking a look at your life, your finances, your relationships, whatever you're trying to define this energetic minimum for, looking at what is happening in your life and being able to determine like what the energetic minimum is. So, like identifying what it is right now. Yeah. So it's like another example in relationships. If you've had like toxic relationship cycles and it's like, people can treat you a certain way and you will find the capacity to forgive them, but you'll never let someone hit you, let's say. You never let someone like physically abuse you. But you do tolerate like gaslighting or some other toxic behaviors or whatever, but you find a way to like just move through the arguments, forgive them, and move on. Then you know that your energetic minimum is abuse, which is a pretty low energetic minimum, right? And so if you want healthy relationships, you've got to identify that and be like, wow, my energetic minimum literally right now is that I won't let this person put their hands on me. That needs to be way higher, right? So then after you've identified what it is defining what is it going to be now? And I think it's valuable when it comes to money of like working in increments so that our subconscious mind isn't just completely like thrown off. And if I say suddenly my energetic minimum is $1 million a month, I don't really think it's that realistic to believe that I'm just going to magically start making $1 million a month, right? So I'm going to choose my next minimum as something that feels like a bit of a stretch compared to what I've been accepting, but that also feels realistically attainable so that I don't create other kinds of stories that come from my subconscious mind around the fear of like, this isn't going to work or that'll never happen. If those stories start running, then you know that you've perhaps tried to do too big of a quantum leap because
Yeah.
that's unhelpful as well. Creating more stories in your head of like, oh my God, this is so unrealistic. That's never going to happen. Who the fuck are you? Unhelpful, right? So, step one, identify it, what it currently is. Step two, decide that you're available for more. Step three, choose your next energetic minimum that feels like a stretch, but is also realistic. And then step four is acting like it, right? It's moving through the world, through your life, and through your business in a way that reflects that energetic minimum. And I think people want, again, a magic wand thing where it's like, spin around in a circle and jump up and down 5 times and say this mantra, and you will quantum leap. But that's like really what it is. And it's just consistency over time with those things.
Yeah, it's that, be, do, have model, like start being that person, doing the things. As a result, you're going to have the things.
Exactly. Yes.
Well, Sam, it's been such a pleasure chatting with you today. You've shared so much incredible wisdom and I've just enjoyed it so, so much. I know the listeners will as well.
Thank you for having me. This has been fun. I feel like we covered a lot of ground.
We went everywhere: lifestyle, business, spirituality. It just really all came full circle as well. Coming back to your word of momentum, acceptance. I feel, yeah, it was a very aligned conversation.
Yes, I loved it. Thank you.
What is something you have recently started in your life?
Okay. Something that I've recently started. I had one, but then I thought of a better one, and I'm trying to remember what that one was. One thing that I started for my business, which I'll share,
Okay.
is I started being more intentional with my content. So I've created like a structure that's going to help me do this, where on Fridays every week,
Yep.
I kind of brainstorm and think of like my content ideas for the following week. And then Mondays are my days that are like dedicated to content creation. And so then I don't have to spend the time thinking about what I want to say or what kind of reels I want to make or what content I'm creating because I've already done that on Friday, but I can actually just like produce it and create it. And then it's there and it's drafted and ready to go. So, in terms of like, yeah, branding and being online and just business stuff, I've realized I've been a little too airy, fairy, flowy with the content and I'm ready to be more intentional. So, that's something that I have started to implement, which I love.
I love that as well. Structure, hey, it helps.
Yes. Yeah. I think like I'm always dipping in and out of like masculine energy, feminine energy. And sometimes we go too far and then we're like, okay, this is way too much structure. It feels way too rigid. It's not fun. And then you go over to the flow and you're like, wait, I'm not getting as much done, or this isn't actually productive, or this doesn't feel good anymore either. So this is a way for me to like find a balance with content, which is, oh, I don't know. Can you relate? It's always kind of a struggle.
Oh, I can totally relate. I find if I set up a nice structure, even if I don't follow it, it's like I subconsciously know I have it there to fall back on if and when I need it. But then it allows me to be more in my fem and be more in that flowing state.
Yes. So this is something I've just started. Talk to me in like a month. We'll see if I'm still doing it.
All right, I'll check in and ask you Friday. Are you planning? Monday to create.
Okay.
Thank you so much, Sam. That was honestly so great to chat with you.
Yes, it was so fun. I loved it.
If you enjoyed this and you want to see more, keep up with us on socials. We are at startsomewhere.podcast and Isabel Prestia on Instagram, and join our Facebook group, the Start Somewhere Society.